Zlayton got the first
on a
goal
header.
On a header.
Yeah. And it wasn't remarkable.
No.
Yeah, and what's worse about it is that everyone made it about Zlayton, right?
Yeah.
And so he comes in and he scores the first goal. And in reality, he didn't do anything.
No.
I mean, it wasn't even like he did something cool to get himself open. It was literally our entire back line just ignored him completely.
And specifically on that one, I think it was Boxall.
Right.
That just left him. He left way too much space.
Yeah, and he was
left him uncovered,
completely
basically.
unmarked, and there he was. He
just
had
an easy header.
Easy goal.
And I mean, he did. We'll get into it. So that was very vanilla, that goal. And other than the fact that it was Zaytland who scored it, he did have a pretty remarkable assist later on in the game.
He did.
Yeah, he did.
So to say he did nothing would be wrong.
But that goal by Zlayton was, what minute was that in?
The 30th.
30th.
Yeah.
So for the first 30 minutes, watching that game at home, Zlayton, he didn't really do anything.
No, he's pretty silent.
He was pretty, covered up, and, he'd get a touch here and there, but that was about it. And I was surprised.
And Brent Kalman was handling him really well. He was getting physical with him.
Yeah.
There were a couple times as Zlayton went down trying to get fouled, didn't get it.
Well, they were talking about that on ESPN, and they were saying they're being physical with him, and they're kind of getting on them, and that's why he hasn't done much.
Yeah.
And so
that was good.
Yeah.
For the first 30 minutes, it was, Zlayton wasn't anybody, and the Loons were giving it to him, and it was going well, and we made it all the way into the second half.
Yep.
Just 1-0, not a big deal, and then here we are. We had the craziest sequence, and I put in my notes that it kind of left my head spinning because I was still trying to process the second goal when they scored their third.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was 49th minute, 50th minute, and it's just like somehow I'm pretty sure it's a hat trick.
Yeah, I think it is too.
And somehow we let our guard down like we always do. Yep. But this is LA Galaxy. They took advantage of it.
Yep.
And again, this comes down to some poor defending. And when finally getting to watch it over and seeing it, both Brent and Michael just kind of let Kamara in. And Kelvo, I don't know, maybe he could have done a little bit more on the side, but overall, it was the center backs chose to shut down, and Lampson, I think, should have stayed home on goal one. He came rushing out, left the goal wide open, and there was goal number 2.
Yeah.
And you bring up defenders, and this is going to be a huge point of emphasis when we get into the off season, especially on this podcast. I think we'll be talking a lot about how bad our defense was this year, and how we can get better next year. And there's going to be some options going into the offseason about who we get rid of and who we keep, and what we can do to better the defense.
Yep.
Because I think our offense is going to be good.
Yeah, I agree.
The defense has got to get better.
Yeah.
Play at 7 for Curtis.
Oh.
Check in here.
We're not here for Curtis.
That's some guy with a computer.
Yeah, not us. We do have a computer, but no problem. I don't know.
I think, and that comes down to, the third goal was the exact same way.
Yeah, exactly right.
And at some point, they're going to have this conversation in the offseason. And honestly, I'm not sure that I would start anyone other than Kelvo next season.
And we'll talk about this in the offseason, but Calvo is the only one I think inked in stone on that back line.
Yeah. As long as he's at left back.
Yeah. But the rest of the other 3, or how many, if you're going to change it up, whatever it is, those are all open spots now.
Yep.
And those are there's competition for that. And maybe it's bringing somebody else in the offseason. Maybe it's making a trade. I don't know, but we'll get into it in the offseason. But so we were all disappointed, I think, in that loss because it was the last game of TCF. Because I think we all wanted it to be something better at the last game at TCF. I think we all wanted to just close it out and say, we were here, we won, we're moving on.
Yeah, and exactly, because TCF Bank was fairly kind to the Loons.
Yes,
they had not only this year they had a good home record, which you touched on. I think it was 10-5 with a couple draws in there. But last year they did fairly well at home as well. So it treated the Loons nicely. It was a good place to play, and I mean, I've said it before. I don't love it as a soccer venue. Obviously, it's not built for that, but it works, and they're lucky to have an outdoor venue like that they could use for a couple of years.
It worked for 2 years, and that was fine. But now we have Allianz Field coming up, and I think three of us are very excited to see what that's going to be like.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And maybe to close out talking about the gameplay itself.
Yeah.
And then Dave can give us some stats.
We haven't touched on the best part of the game yet, of course, because we thought, you mentioned the two amazingly quick goals by LA in the 50th and 51st minute to make it 3-0. You thought that was it. Oh, that's it. All the air is out of the stadium. But fortunately, in the 53rd minute, what happened?
Yeah, I mean, Rodriguez got another goal.
Yep.
It was a header. And Dave and I were talking about this before the podcast. Live, you didn't get to appreciate the assist at all. In fact, I told Dave that I didn't even really see it.
I didn't think anything of the assist. I just saw the header, and he was in the right spot at the right time. Ran through traffic. There was a few defenders around him, and I thought that was great, but I didn't notice the pass.
Yeah, and Quintero had a phenomenal. I mean, I want to call it a cross.
Yeah, you
but
could.
Honestly, I'm not sure it was.
He was close to the. He wasn't on the on the sideline.
Yeah,
he was kind of towards the middle of the field, but it was very deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was just. I would bet probably 35 yards out, and he put it right on the money,
Which isn't surprising.
Yeah,
It's Darwin, man.
yeah, and the best thing is the header itself. Was also really good because Rodriguez is coming across goal and he heads it kind of backwards and down into the, I guess that would have been now at that point the back post.
Sure.
And it was right down at the ground.
And the way he was surrounded, I mean, Darwin had to put that ball exactly where he put it or there would be no chance at a goal because he was running through traffic. He was covered up.
And before the podcast began, we talked about the difference. We brought up Christian Ramirez. And the difference between Christian and Rodriguez is the fact Christian needed space around him to make things happen.
Right.
So a header from Christian on that play would have never, I don't think, would have happened.
Probably not.
Rodriguez is a guy who gets in there, he gets dirty, he beats some guys up a little bit. He's aggressive, and that's what we need from that spot.
Yep.
Because Darwin can get it in there. Darwin can put it on point. But you need a guy to break through that line to get that header off.
Right, exactly.
And it worked out.
Yep.
I want to bring up, before Dave gets into stats, I'm going to bring up a couple things about the broadcast, because I wasn't there, but I watched the broadcast on ESPN, and a couple things. ESPN seems to know, from this broadcast, seemed to know nothing about the Loons at all. They didn't make mention of the fact that it was the last game at TCF Bank Stadium when I was watching it. Never heard him bring it up, which was, I think it's kind of a bad thing. I mean, this is the last game at TCF Bank, and they're moving to a new stadium.
Right.
And I get that Zoltan or Zoltan or Zaitlin. Or
that wasn't right either.
Whenever I hear his name, I think of. Remember, you guys remember the movie Big with Tom Hanks, where he turns into an adult.
Yeah.
And there was
Yes, I know where you're going.
Was it Zoltan?
Where he got his little wish
with
card.
the wish card, and it was Zoltan or something like that.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, it was like a weird. So every time I see what's his name, I think of that freaking movie.
Well, thanks, Tony. That's all.
I know.
The rest of.
So, anywho, they played it off like this was the reason why this game was so huge is because he was there.
Right.
Which it was a big game for ESPN because he was there. But let's make some mention of the fact that it was the last game at TCF Bank Stadium.
Exactly.
Okay. Then they brought up the fact that Angelo hadn't scored any goals for the Loons yet. And I'm like, whoa. He had scored 3 goals previous to this game.
Right.
And then they were bringing up
in
the thing,
10 games.
In
right.
10 games. And they were bringing up the fact, well, he has to do more. And blah, blah. I'm going, whoa. He's been with this team for 10 games, okay?
Yep.
Let's let him get set before we start going that he's not a great contributor or a great scorer yet.
Exactly,
you know?
because the reason they brought him in was exactly for what he did during that game.
Yeah, exactly.
He ran through that box in traffic, was able to receive a Darwin Quintero, cross. We will call it cross, I'd say, a deep cross. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's what they pictured when they got him. That's what they pictured.
And so my problem with that was the fact that they didn't give any type of. They didn't do any background on Rodriguez at all.
Right.
And then the announcer's opinion is the Loons had a good home record because teams hate playing on turf.
Right.
That's why they have a good home record. That's the only reason. That's what they brought up. And I was like, well, a little bit of that is probably true, but let's not say that's the only reason they have a good home record.
I don't know if you guys have ever stepped field on TCF Bank Stadium on the turf, but I have a few times. Yeah. And it's so realistic. I mean, I could see people almost preferring that. I know they don't, especially soccer players. I know football teams do, But so I mean, I don't know if there's a whole lot to complain about there with regards to the playing surface, but they do.
You can bring that up if you want to. I mean, you can totally bring that up.
Right.
But let's not say it's the only reason why the Loons have a great home record.
Yeah. Well, I think it's typical. We're a bad team. Let's not give us credit for anything. Mm-hmm. I feel a little disappointed that Taylor Twellman would have been involved in those conversations.
And he was involved in all these comments, and that was the problem.
Yeah, because he's a Minnesota guy. He knows the team.
He does.
And obviously maybe he's trying not to sugarcoat anything.
But again, he was on the big stage.
Yeah.
You're playing to a national audience, so you can't really be a homer at that point.
Well, yeah.
But then again, you can't totally diss the Loons.
Right.
I mean, why? You're ESPN. You have to play both sides, right? You have to play Galaxy side and Loon side. You got to make it even. But it seemed like the whole game, it was all Galaxy.
Yeah. Well, you can complain about this broadcast, and you have quite a bit here.
Yeah.
Obviously, you weren't a huge fan of it, but I'll tell you one good thing that came out of the broadcast, in my opinion, and I'm only half joking when I say this, is Taylor Twellman's co-host. I can't even think of his name right now, but his co-host came up right after his goal. Yeah. He came up with a nickname for Angelo Rodriguez that I just loved, and maybe I haven't heard it before, but he called him A-Raj.
A-Raj.
And that's going to stick for me. I don't think I'm going to be able to call him by any other name going forward. I'm going to have to say A-Raj this, A-Raj that. It just has a nice ring to it.
But the problem with it's okay. It's a good nickname. But the problem with me is we all know about A-Rod.
Yes. And that's
so again, anybody who's Rodriguez and an A starting their first name is A-Rod. It's just the way it works,
Or if you're Aaron with a Rogers.
Yeah. A-Rod. It's the same deal.
Yeah.
But it's a good nickname. So the game has just finished here.
3-2 final.
3-2.
We lost 3-2.
Hat trick for Zardes.
Hat trick, yep.
A brace for Calvo.
Yep. Let's get into this game a little bit, guys, because we watched it in person here at. Let's go back to Dave.
We got to keep. We got to be masochistic.
There's a few more things I want to tie in. I'll bring up a few stats here and a few more. Get into details maybe.
Go ahead.
But also I want to talk about the atmosphere at the game after the game had ended, which might have been the best part about the day. But while we get into it, I just want to start with, we had touched on it. We said that unfortunately the Loons in this game, the LA Galaxy game, had missed some opportunities. Yeah. There was defensive lapses, but specifically with the missed opportunities, there's a couple stats that jump out, and it's the Loons actually had more shots. They had 14 shots to the Galaxy's 9, but that's not, I guess, what I want to get into. They had 14 shots, and the Loons did, but only 2 of those shots were on target. Oh. And I think that's your missed opportunities, because I think there was a couple goals that I shouldn't say goals, there would be goals or chances where I felt like you should have seen a little better result come out of those chances. Yes. And I know Taylor Twellman said that A-Raj, I get to say it again, A-Raj